Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be indifference versus standing up for yourself. Well, I've got an email here from a guy who apparently just started dating a woman he really likes, but he's getting frustrated because she's doing and saying things that are not matching his expectations. And so he's kind of torn. He wants to speak up for himself and put his foot down, but he also is wrestling with, what about being indifferent and letting her come and go as she pleases? And so it's interesting. It's a real short email, but you can see what's going. This is the mindset that causes a guy to fall under what I call the illusion of action, thinking I have to do something to make this girl like me more, want to spend more time with me, sleep with me more, be more into me. In other words, he's got an idea of what he expects the relationship to eventually be like in the future. And so he's living in the future, but he's not really living in the present moment and seeing the reality for what it is. And this is the kind of mindset that causes most guys to screw their chances up with somebody who's really into them from the beginning. So it's a great email to basically step in and help this guy keep from going in the direction that he wants to go. He's emotionally driven to go, but obviously it's just going to lead to rejection, and I'm obviously going to point out why. So I got a quote that I wrote, and then we're going to go through his email and help him balance out what's the difference. When do you put your foot down, and when do you be totally indifferent and let a woman come and go and do what she pleases? So the quote says, "Love is freedom. People who struggle to love themselves and their lives the way they are take actions based upon the fear that their expectations will not be met in order to force their desired outcome to happen, instead of letting it happen or not happen at all naturally. These become unhealthy attachments that lead to actions that make the other person who they desire to feel like they are losing their freedom. It is natural for all human beings to be repelled by force and control that threaten their freedom. Love is allowing, not force." So you see this guy's wrestling with just allowing her to be and come to him naturally, and also trying to force things to happen. And the only reason he's trying to force things is because deep down he's fearful and he's worried that it's not going to work out. Now, why would you be fearful and worried that things are not going to work out? Well, maybe in the past things have pretty much always not worked out when you really are into somebody. And you literally start trying to force things and chase the girl right out of your life. Because a guy who's centered, who's indifferent, who's not attached, he has a mission, he has a purpose, he has his life that he's building, and his purpose and his mission he's seeking to accomplish and make it happen. And so when a guy becomes fixated on a woman and fixated on a future relationship, or locking her down to a commitment, or getting her to be the way he wants her to be according to his fantasy that he's projecting onto her, he's going to try to start to force things. It's going to make the woman feel like she's losing her freedom. It's going to make her feel unsafe and uncomfortable being around the guy, because he's starting to give off the kind of vibe that a stalker or a control freak or a potentially abusive guy is going to put out. And you got to understand that women encounter guys all the time who don't know what they're doing and try to force things. And so they've gotten really good at sniffing that out and ditching the guys before things get too far down the road. So let's go through his email. He says, "Hey Coach, I'm on my second pass through of your book, and I have a question about indifference versus self-respect. When a woman isn't giving you what you want, it's hard to tell which to do. Well, as I teach in my book, your job is to create the opportunity for sex to happen. In other words, the potential for it to happen. You extend an invitation, and either way, whether she accepts it or not, you're cool with it. Because you want somebody who's enthusiastic about spending time with you, not somebody who you're trying to convince or prove yourself to. Because a man who values and loves and respects himself knows he's awesome. He doesn't have to prove himself to anybody. The thought is actually absurd to him. And therefore, when a woman senses a guy or sees a guy or feels a guy doing these kinds of things, he's not acting like an alpha male. He's acting like an insecure beta male. So back to his email, he says, when a woman isn't giving you what you want, it's hard to tell which to do. Let her be the cat and roam the neighborhood, or put your foot down and communicate what you expect. Keep in mind, this guy's not, he just started dating this woman. He's not in a committed relationship. Obviously, you need to set healthy boundaries, but when you just start dating somebody, you don't show up and give them a list of what you expect and you want them to do. They don't know you and you don't know them. In his mind, you can tell he's kind of already decided that this is who he wants as his girlfriend, instead of being skeptical like the average woman is, who approaches it, is this guy good for me? Do I really like this guy enough? So you should have the attitude of being skeptical. Because remember, people can hide who they really are for about the first 90 days of a relationship. You can't go out on 2 or 3 dates and say, oh, this is the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Even though you may have those kinds of feelings, they're really just emotions. You don't have enough data and you don't have enough experience or time being with somebody to really know who they are until they've let their guard down and spent so much time around you that it just comes out. When is it appropriate to do which? I suspect that the stage of the relationship is what matters, but I wanted to ask you specifically. Also, if you're getting emotionally raked over the coals because you've developed expectations, so in other words, right there, he's basically saying, I really like this girl and I really want her to be my girlfriend and I'm fearful it's not going to work and this is upsetting to me. In other words, he's saying, I'm becoming totally uncentered by my emotions. I'm attached to a future outcome. And if that outcome looks in doubt, that's going to scare me and it's going to cause me to be fearful. And when you're in a fearful state, you're going to try to force things. Why? We try to force things because we want certainty. Because one of our 6 human needs is certainty. In other words, certainty that we know things are going to happen or be a certain way. We're going to be able to pay our bills, have a roof over our head, those kinds of things. Or somebody loving you that you want to be loved by. And that's the worst thing you can do with the woman. Remember, it's a cat analogy. What happens when you're petting a cat and the cat decides he doesn't want to sit in your lap anymore? The cat leaves. The cat gets up and goes and does what it wants. If you chase after the cat and pick the cat up, put it back in your lap, it's not going to like that very much. It's going to get right back up and take off again. And women are the same way. Now, dogs, they don't give a fuck. They just love attention and they'll never leave your side. I mean, you've probably seen videos of where a dog has become so attached to its owner and then the owner passes away, the dog goes and lays on the grave. Or when somebody doesn't come back, the dog sits and waits for you to come home. Cats aren't like that. Cats are like, And they go and they do what they want. And, trying to control them, it's like, think about it. The more you try to control a cat, what does it do? It starts to hiss and it starts to scratch. He says, if you're getting emotionally raked over the coals because you've developed expectations despite being in an early stage of the relationship, should you just be fake with the funk, with indifference, despite your true feelings? Well, if you start communicating that you don't like how she's showing up, that she's not giving you the attention she wants, or whatever it is that you feel is lacking, I mean, you're already talking about a relationship. In your mind, you've already decided you want to be in a relationship, or maybe you think you're in a relationship with her. But she's just kind of casually seeing how things go, and when you start doing that, you're going to give off the vibe of the stalker, of the creepy guy, of the guy that's potentially dangerous to be alone with. And that's naturally going to scare any woman, and they're going to be repulsed and turned off, and they're going to lose their attraction for you. I suspect your answer will be that at the early stage of a relationship, you shouldn't have expectations. Is that right? Yeah, you should be there with your eyes open, wanting to analyze and see, kind of like a detective, who is this woman really? Is she really good for me? Are we compatible? Do we have the same goals and values? When we're not having sex or just hanging out or driving in a car, are we okay being silent and listening to the radio or whatever it happens to be? Just because you have a fantasy of what you want and the girl looks like what you want, it's just not smart to decide based on your emotions and your high feelings of attraction for her that this is the one. Because it's just an emotion. He says, however, in your book, you gave your friend advice that he should put his foot down in a non-committed relationship situation. So I assume he's referring to the situation where a guy I knew this was a very wealthy, successful guy. And I think at the time, I think he'd been married and divorced 3 times at that point. And this particular woman, she was married and he was having an affair with her. And so because he was dating her, even though she was married to and living in a relationship, even though she wasn't happy in that relationship, what was going on for the whole year is she was bouncing back and forth between him and her. In that particular situation, you shouldn't be dating somebody that's cheating on their spouse and thinking that that's going to turn into a great, healthy, monogamous, loyal type of relationship. Bottom line, when she's not happy, she's going to cheat on her husband. She's not going to feel any remorse. And if she ends up with you eventually, if you eventually slack off and don't do the right thing, she's going to do the same thing to you. So in that particular situation, what I told him to do was to remove himself. Say, hey, well, you need to figure out what you want to do with your husband. If if we're going to date, if we're going to continue to see each other, I'm not going to be the other guy. A lot of people get trapped in those situations, especially women, waiting for the guy to leave his wife, and it just never happens. He likes having the mistress. He's not going to leave his family, and he'll tell the girl whatever he needs to tell her in order to keep her patiently waiting for someday that's just simply never going to come. And so in that particular situation, that's why I said you got to stand up for yourself. You shouldn't be dating. Well, number one, he shouldn't have gotten involved with her in the first place. And number two, he should have been strong enough to walk away, because he basically behaved like a guy that didn't have a lot of choices. Because if you have lots of choices and you're looking for somebody to have a relationship with or settle down with, you're not going to get involved with somebody who's in a relationship with somebody else. People that tend to do that consistently or go after unavailable people, it's a way to avoid having a relationship altogether. And that particular guy, because I wrote about that. This is like, we're talking 11 years ago at that point. She ended up finally leaving her husband after he backed off and gave her the space to resolve her marital situation. They dated for several years. She's a really cool chick. I know her. And when they dated for a couple years, and then they split up, and then he met somebody else, got married, and within a year he was divorced again. So that was like the fourth divorce. Even though this guy's very wealthy, he's had 4 divorces. Probably marriage is not the right form of type of relationship for somebody like that. So in that particular case, it was okay for him to put his foot down, but the reality is he shouldn't have been dating her in the first place because she was married to somebody else. Now, if somebody's being abusive to you or they're being disrespectful, if you make a date for 8 o'clock to make dinner together and she shows up at 10:30, you say that's kind of rude. I don't appreciate that. You should definitely speak up for yourself, because there are women out there that are flaky and they're terrible with the little details. They're never late. When you show up to pick them up, they're never ready. When you have them come over to your place for a date, they show up late, they forget things. Me personally, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And I don't have friends that are flaky, and I certainly don't date women that are flaky. And as soon as I spot that behavior, on to the next. You got to be strong enough to walk away instead of projecting your fantasy onto somebody and hoping that you're going to be able to change them. So I would say to you, the guy that wrote the email, is that you don't know her well enough yet. You just started casually dating. You should really be looking to see what she's really like, especially if she mentions things about previous boyfriends or people she's dated. Because a lot of times, if they have a tendency to cheat and to lie, those things will come up. And they'll tell you those things. And that's valuable intel, if you will. You want to know those things. If you're looking to have an exclusive monogamous relationship and somebody tells you that they've cheated on pretty much everybody they've ever been with, and they come from a family of cheaters and liars, well, you really should be looking at that person more of as a fuck buddy or friends with benefits or somebody just to have some fun with until you meet somebody who shares the same goals and values that you do. But losing your shit and demanding that she spend more time with you and demanding that she like you more, I mean, you can't talk a woman into liking you more. The only thing you really can do is be her best option and take her out and have great, fun dates and let her come to you at her pace, like I talk about in the book. Because if you try to force things, if you start saying things, if she sees that you're getting angry and pissed off and irritated with her behavior and it's not matching your expectations, she's going to tend to back away and start testing you. And the average guy that doesn't know any better, when that happens, he gets even more irritated because she's backing away and even further not meeting his expectations, which drives her away even more eventually to the fact where she friend zones him or ghosts him completely and then blows him off. And then you've blown it, because especially in the beginning, when she doesn't have an emotional bond to you, it's much easier for a woman to walk away from a guy as opposed to several months down the road when she's head over heels in love with him and find out that he's a fucking turd in the punch bowl. So if you haven't read my book yet, you can read it for free by going to my website, subscribing to the email newsletter, and if you'd like to get the Audible version, you can also get that for free by going to Amazon or audible.com and signing up for a free trial. And right now is the time of doing this video when you do, at least in the United States, I don't know about overseas, but at least in the United States, when you do an Audible free trial, like right now, they're giving you 2 free books. So you get my book, audiobook for free, and you could get another one totally for free. So there's absolutely no risk. So go learn the fundamentals. You can read on my website for free. You can also get the Audible version for free. And if you'd like to get my help personally with a situation you're in, go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book whichever coaching option works for you. And I will talk to you soon.